I got one of these diamond smokestacks a few months back for a project that I never wound up using it for. However, it was a pretty short smokestack, and the tall smokestack on my recently acquired 060 felt a little bit out of place. So, I got a little idea for what to do with these two. Removing the original smokestack did not take long.
Okay, disclaimer. This came off really easy this time, but I did this already. You have to start off by twisting it to one side just enough so you hear a little snap. Then you want to do it the other way, just enough until you hear a little snap, and then you're just, after you've heard those two snaps, you're good. You just have to wiggle it up and down and slowly pull it out. Takes a little bit of force. It's not too much work, but usually if you're doing this for the first time, it is going to take longer than how long it took for me to take this sucker off. Just a little disclaimer there.
With the original smokestack gone, I got to work test fitting the new one. It was a white metal casting from Wiseman Model Services, split into two halves. While the base fit on okay, the top of the stack had a small bit of flash that was extruding in such a way that the two pieces would not nicely fit together.
Oh, there was a file around here somewhere, I think.
Once I found the file, I worked away the flash material over the course of a few minutes.
Oh, that looks good. It looks perfect, actually.
I test fit the smokestack on the locomotive one last time before moving on to the next step.
I mean, obviously it's not the right colors right now, but it's a good start.
Next, I tore into the tender, getting ready to replace the coal pile. All it took to get the shell off the tender was 2 screws on the underside, and the top popped right off. Eventually, I accidentally tore the wires for the tender headlight while messing with the shell, but fortunately I did remember the order that those wires were supposed to go into the decoder. The blue wire went to the spot on the decoder marked V+, and the white one, counterintuitively, went to the spot marked BL.
I don't think my phone picked up that noise, but there was a very loud bang. Happens to be New Year's Eve. I wouldn't be surprised if some people are excited to celebrate today. I don't know if I, in post, will decide to leave in my screams every time the explosions get a little too loud, but there's your explanation. If I do leave in my screams, you don't understand why. Okay, so setting the screams aside,
We have to change our footage to something that was recorded after I finished this project. One thing we didn't really record all that well was removing the coal pile from the tender of the 060. And so in order to try and help show and demonstrate what we did, I thought I would use the 2662 because this is a much older locomotive. And the older Bachmann locomotives actually had interchangeable tender loads. You could have a wood load, you could have a coal load, which was the default, or you could have this oil tank. And the way that this worked is that each one would have these small little pegs that it would fit into, except for maybe the wood load. The wood load doesn't have any pegs on the bottom. But you can see here that there's 3 prominent holes around the decoder. One here, if I can focus correctly, and one right here on the opposite side. The reason for this is the oil tank has 3 pegs on the bottom that will line up with it, and the coal pile also has 3 pegs on the bottom that will line up with those holes. And so if you wanted to put on the coal pile or the oil tank, you would shove it in. You'd shove those pegs in those holes. Now, the 060 actually seems to have this exact same system in place, but it doesn't have the replacements. And because it doesn't have the replacements, the manufacturer just glued the pegs in place, which makes it a lot harder to remove. So what my father and I did, well, really what my father did, it was his idea, was we actually drilled out these pegs and a little bit of the area of the holes around them. Because we knew we were already going to completely destroy the coal pile anyway, so we really didn't care because we could cover up the bigger holes that we left behind with wood in the future. So we just used a small drill and drilled out the pegs on the coal pile. So that's how we removed it. Now, if you excuse me, I have some wood to put back in place. My dad helped me out on this next part of the project, and since I was doing other things at the same time, I kind of just didn't record what my father was doing. However, I did try to explain what he would be doing off camera.
So we did that drilling technique. This one we screwed up, and this one is probably the most fragile connection from this coal pile. There's a couple of scratches here that we might have to cover up, make them look like rust or something, but tender is coming together pretty well. We're going to have to cover up the decoder though, because with things the way that they are,
You have a scale ruler over there or not?
I got an HO one, yeah?
Sure. No, it doesn't. You know, I'm just measuring something, so the scale doesn't matter, actually. It's just the measurements that I'm interested in.
Ah, I see what you're doing.
See, so, because you're going to be working on the shell, before you attach the shell, you do the work. And then you just keep making sure it still fits.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting with those little diodes or whatever that are sticking out above the
yeah, those are probably
base.
capacitors.
Capacitors.
I think that's
I have no clue. It's going to be interesting, though. Yeah. Anything else you want to measure?
No, I'm going to get some styrene and
Okay.
start cutting a plate for that.
Sounds good. So at the moment, my father is getting some styrene so that we can cover up the decoder. Just reinforce that idea. And then we're going to pile up wood on top of the styrene. And we'll probably be using this leftover piece up front to help cover the bottom so that it doesn't quite stick out so much. I'll probably repaint this thing first. In fact, let's get that out of the way.
Okay, measure.
To finish off my explanation, those capacitors we mentioned earlier were sticking up above the top of the tender, and thus, to keep the wood pile separated from the decoder, we had to add a little hump to make it over that part specifically. So there was an extra step. We didn't just lay the styrene on top of the tender. It's most of what we did, but there was an extra step or two.
All right, sorry about this. Try it out again.
All right. So, yep.
Oh, it's recording, huh?
No, I've been painting. I might as well record. Should we primer the smokestack?
Ready?
Yes, sir. Ready. We added some primer to the smokestack. We also wound up spray painting it black.
Oh no, that totally doesn't look right. Hold on. There we go. I think that's good. Let's try adding some brown stains to the wood boards. See if that'll help at all.
I meant pastels, not stains. I was about to use pastels for weathering the locomotive, and I thought I'd try them to help make parts that were representing wooden items appear more wooden. I gotta say, this darker brown color worked way better than the more tannish brown that we had before. Before I did any serious grime with the pastels, though, I used some CA, or superglue, to fit the new smokestack to the smoke box. I waited for the bottom half to settle before gluing on the top, as I knew it would be easy to fit the two pieces of the smokestack together, but since the overall stack wasn't designed to conform to this boiler type, I would need to spend a little more time and care handling the base. I didn't want to risk tipping it all over by adding an extra component.
Yeah, just keep it straight while it dries, because, oh, well, you're going to have to re-glue it unless it's going to set like that.
There we go. It's looking pretty good.
Okay. Put the top back on.
I did.
Oh,
wait, right, this top.
Yeah. Because that stuff, the air makes it start to set up. So you have to keep as little air with it as possible. Okay, just see that this fits properly.
Yeah, it fits over. It's a little loose, of course, but that's good.
Well, a little loose. We're just going to glue it in place.
Exactly.
I'm going to get some glue for it now. And make sure it's really down properly. Pretty well centered, at least.
Doesn't need to be perfect.
I know you're going to bury it.
Yeah, exactly, so we're not too worried.
Oh, so how's the smokestack's looking pretty straight?
Look at it head on here.
Yeah, it looks really good.
Great.
Looks good.
I think I really was. It was worth spending the time to make sure it was centered.
Well, that's why I picked that kind of glue. That's a slow setting.
Well, it's set pretty fast, all things considered.
But for CA, that's slow setting. Some CA can set just like that.
Yeah, but this was slow enough that I was able to adjust it into position, but fast enough that I'm able to keep working.
Well, it's slow enough that you've got time to adjust it, and fast enough that you don't have to hold it for very long.
Exactly. So it's looking great.
Before adding the wood pile, I painted the styrene black so that it would better blend in with the tender. For the wood pile on the tender, I bought myself a jar of scale 2-foot firewood made out of real wood and glued it in place using canopy glue. This took me probably around half an hour to do. Don't let the magic of editing fool you. This was a tedious task. To add some color variation to the pile, I painted a few pieces of wood with the brown pastels. I then painted the side of the tender black, just painting over the railroad name, or more realistically, the company name, so that I could make the engine more generic. As the texture from the painted over lettering was still showing through when the lighting was just wrong, I finally added some heavy grime and weathering to the train, especially the tender, as that made it harder to really make out the lines on the letters. And with that, with my throttle in one hand and my phone in the other, I present to you this little thing. The finished product. While this 060 really doesn't have much of a dedicated home, its generic appearance is going to make it fit in most anywhere on any layout, on any project that I do, and I rather like that. But I also like that it's kind of got this sort of logging vibe to it to me. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I don't know. I like it. It's short, it's stubby, it's cute. I think replacing the smokestack with the diamond stack rather than a straight one was the right call. It's a pretty little engine, although I must admit I am a little bit disappointed, because I no longer can work on this engine. Fortunately for me, I have some other engines that I can work on.